Steelers fans, welcome into the Knoll Road. Welcome in. And now we must be dreaming. Another scenario has been presented for Mike Tomlin exiting the Steelers organization at the end of the 2025 campaign. Insider report, veteran coaches looking for a change of scenery. So fired, traded. Maybe he'll just decide to quit. We'll break that down, plus the rest of the day in Steelers news. Here we go.
To the corner of the end zone. Oh, for a touchdown!
Yeah, buddy, welcome in. Dawson and New Bear, like the video. If you like the video, here it is sitting in all of its glory. Josina Anderson, one of the most networked insiders in all of the NFL. I mean, she got sent home from ESPN or whatever, picked up on her own, and she's maybe even doing better work now. Says there's a longtime NFL head coach out there who is considering wanting a change of scenery and has told others of these thoughts. The possibility that this is Mike Tomlin is significant. I'll look at here in just a second with you, New Bear. The most tenured NFL coaches, none of them have can hold a candle to the probabilities that she is talking about Mike Tomlin, because all the other long-tenured coaches have much better situations where they could win a Super Bowl. I think a coach would only want to leave if he's, become convinced that they aren't going to win, and that would be Mike Tomlin. But the point I want to make here, buddy, is you cannot really get over 50% probability that Tomlin is going to leave by getting fired or being traded. Those seem like low probabilities. But if you add in here, maybe he wants to leave, I think chances are greater than 50% right now that the Steelers will have a new coach in 2026.
Because he wants to leave? You're saying you're going more than flip a coin because Mike T wants out. So the funniest thing about this for me in an unreal, meaning not real situation, is that Andy Reid is tired of winning enough that there's better cheeseburgers in Cleveland than there is barbecue in Kansas City. That was my favorite thing that I saw going around today. The first thing I thought was there's no reason, Tomlin, for all of his arrogance, the class on both sides of the conversation with Rooney and Tomlin, there's no way this gets public. There's no way this even gets leaked. And then you go, well, wait a minute. Is his agent trying to get ahead of the coaching carousel? Maybe he doesn't want to go to New York. I personally don't think he wants anything to do with New York, because the national media and the local media particularly have turned on Mike Tomlin, and he is now coming to Tomlin Tuesdays and getting grilled about 4 verts into cover 3. That ain't how it used to play. Tomlin used to sit up there and use 5-syllable words and show everyone in the room that he was smarter than everybody who was going to pull up a chair. And that is just no longer the case. However, John Harbaugh just entered the chat, and the team that's about to steal the North from them is why I would say it's these two guys, agents, calling the Josina Andersons, calling the Aditi Kikabwalas, and trying to get ahead of the cherry-picked job that they actually want, that they think is going to come open. Because just like they've been running up and down sidelines, and in Mike Tomlin's case, sometimes stepping on the field to trip players, they're going to be competing for that job if they both decide to leave the respective towns they've won Super Bowls in.
Yeah, I could definitely see that, where Tomlin and his agent can see the writing on the wall, the Pittsburgh media turning toward against you, the legends, current players are talking about it.
Kabali is off. McAfee is off.
So why couldn't Rooney have come to Tomlin and said, listen, buddy, we don't want to fire you. You don't want to be fired, but we need a new solution. So do you want to you want to put your name in the ring for openings now that are already starting to become available? You want to maybe help us generate some trade conversation by floating this out there that you do want out. So, I think there's about a 10 or 15% chance they would fire him if they go 2-4 down the stretch and finish 8-9. I think right now there might only be a 2% chance they could trade him. But if you interject, maybe Tomlin is burnt out after 19 seasons, or sees we have no shot of winning another Super Bowl here. We got to go get another quarterback. I don't believe in our front office. We haven't drafted a Pro Bowl defensive player since 2018. Like, we got a lot of bad going on here. Our best defensive players.
These guys are all in bed with each other. I have to go over the top. Mike Florio doesn't come out and say the Steelers could get a first-round pick or a first and more, and Filipponi and everyone else around town isn't tweeting, retweeting, quote tweeting, making up their own versions of trades if everyone isn't talking to everyone. So I mean, I actually, if this then that, if this is real at all, it's like 99.9% Mike Tomlin, because if it's real at all, then he is literally looking at the situation in totality, saying, my schemes don't work anymore, but I don't want to take a year off.
Well, I learned a long time ago to never underestimate the stupidity of NFL owners. They are drunk on money. They're not paying attention to what wins in the NFL. They like doing what is comfortable. They trust the same people they've trusted for 3 or 4 decades when they pick up the phone to get advice. So I guess somebody could trade for Tomlin, but no smart team would right now, for all of the reasons that we are wringing our hands and lamenting and praying every night to Jesus that the Steelers will actually move on from him. Most of the league knows that. The Giants might be a team that doesn't. You know, I think what the Maras have done post Coughlin is a joke. I mean, they're nearly as bad as their crosstown sweetmates there in the Jets.
Well, and unlike them, you know, the Jets have at least a war chest of picks, and they should have more, but they could, you know, hashtag franchise tag Breece Hall and do some other things with guys that we thought were going to move, like Quinnen Williams' brother, right? And guys that are probably just going to walk on and maybe follow other guys across the country. But, you know, short of digressing and rabbit holing all the way back to NFL trade deadline, I think, you know, you mentioned earlier that maybe he doesn't like the front office, trust the front office. There's been change there. There's been change everywhere. There's been change everywhere except for with the head coach. He's tried to bring in his hand-picked coordinators. He's picked guys up off the scrap heap. Guys who weren't good in other places all of a sudden are good enough for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There is no Mike Tomlin coaching tree, right?
It's a joke. To
your point about, you know, the NFL drunk on money and owners
idiots
buying into or so here's where this gets really interesting is like when I was talking about the Harbaugh versus Tomlin thing is there aren't like, what job do you want? Like the Bengals are probably going to fire Zach Taylor unless Burrow comes back and they go on a heater and you go, let's run this back one more time. But do you think he would honestly go to Cincinnati? Same question, Cleveland. Stefanski writing on the wall. Like, unless Shedeur, and by the way, 11 out of 20 with that defense doing what that defense does, I cannot wait to see the next few weeks of what's going to happen in Cleveland, because they've got the new stadium. They've got all this stuff ahead of them that they think with, you know, one of the 27 QBs that they drafted actually panning out. Could Mike Tomlin be the guy to carry that franchise out of the depths once and for all? But like, really, you go through, okay, Tennessee and fired their coach, dumpster fire, young quarterback. Why would you trust Mike Tomlin, who wasn't able to develop anybody at the end of Ben, post Ben, through Ben, even with a first round Kenny Pickett, the guy that he watched for 5 years, who was foolproof, idiot proof? Like, where's he going to go? The Raiders aren't going to fire Pete Carroll. What job is there that's going to all of a sudden come open besides New York? And where else are we going with this? Like, where else? What other job do you want after you've been somewhere for 20 years and won a Super Bowl that you would actually want to go? Like, whatever.
Miami.
And then Minka Fitzpatrick can immediately request a trade. I love it.
I mean, I would like to go to Miami. That's the number one city to work for.
Oh my God. You talk about dumb owners, arrogant owners.
Oh, terrible. Yeah. And that's what you need.
And money for Tom Brady tampering. Like, they'll do whatever they want down there.
There are so many teams out there that, number one, might not understand the schematic revolution that's happened over the last 10 years because they just aren't paying enough attention. Number two, there are teams that might understand it but believe it is secondary in importance to a leader of men and a culture builder, and they might look at Mike Tomlin as exactly what our team needs. Like in Miami, it's without a compass right now. They don't know where the hell they're going. They don't know up from down. They've just been an absolute dumpster fire. And, maybe Mike Tomlin is the guy to start rebuilding that from the ground up. And right now you're thinking our schematics are secondary to teaching young football players what it takes to be a pro.
Miami Mike is really interesting too, because the Brian Flores lawsuit still exists, and that would allow the franchise to say, hey, here's a thorn in the side of the thing that's been a thorn in the side of this narrative that they've tried to just lift the rug up and sweep under. This would actually probably allow their lawyers to say some really interesting things in court against Brian Flores and the claims that he's made against the team. I mean, not that I'm trying to play this out in the public relations liege, but like, come on, man. Like, how many ways do you need to cut Miami Mike to make it work? Well, he ain't going to play Tua because he's not going to stand for that ball getting put in harm's way, right? He'd have to go, I mean, short of hugging or immediately packing up the U-Haul for him, the Mika Fitzpatrick thing gets real interesting. You want to talk about selling tickets and jerseys and PSLs and hot dogs and everything that goes into it. Miami Mike is nice.
Yeah, and again, I don't think he has real trade value, but you never know how different teams would look at him. I just think from this point in the story, we'd be looking at what is this most likely scenario between the Steelers and Mike Tomlin if this story is true and Tomlin's camp wants to float the idea that I'm going elsewhere. This is a test the water type of leak to see who's biting on the other end.
Well, and the thing about Miami is it's not New York, it's not Chicago. It's not any, like, Miami, like Los Angeles, has so much other stuff, pop culture beyond sports ball, especially football, so much going on in Miami that he would probably stay relatively Teflon versus going to New York and having the New York Post have a field day with his Tomlinisms.
Yeah. I think the situation of the history with the Maras and the Rooneys makes that interesting. It'd be really, really curious to see how, Mike Tomlin would look at that media. Sometimes coaches just put on a smile and talk to the media to show their respect and to try to keep them at bay, but they actually spend zero time thinking about what they actually say and no time digesting their content. So his only interaction legitimately could just be the press conferences and the walk-offs. Here are the other coaches with tenure. I don't see any of them wanting to move on. Maybe the fan base could be fed up with the Sean McDermott in Buffalo after the playoff losses, or, John Harbaugh with the Ravens. Maybe they just think Lamar Jackson needs a different coach. But if I'm either one of those guys, I'm thinking clearly we need a Super Bowl to cement the legacy and try to build a resume as a Hall of Fame coach. And our chances are going to greatly decrease if we don't have Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. Andy Reid will just retire. Sean McVay, same thing. Why would you leave the Rams? He's got everything perfect, including, the lifestyle and the city and the wife and all that. And Kyle Shanahan with the Niners might be the second most likely. Maybe he's seeing the end of the line there, less commitment from the ownership. But, man, he and his dad were big on Brock Purdy, and I can't imagine they would want to give up on him so soon.
Well, I think like 4, 7, 8, 9, half of that list is probably going to get fired one way or the other, unless the Bills win the Super Bowl and they give everyone lifetime contracts. But, Shanahan's interesting because if you're Miami, you don't want a retread. Like, who's going to be excited about, unless you go full Miami Vice, Miami Nice, Miami Mike, unless you go full Bad Boys on Mike Tomlin, like, as a football coach, as a football fan base, you cannot look at what's happening, what has transpired since 2016 in Pittsburgh and say, oh, yeah, this is a clear path forward. This guy's got it. He's going to lay. Shanahan is one of those guys who's built a program in a modern way and done things against the grain and had them work out, and done things against the grain and had injury luck, fumble luck, and all the things go against them, and still finds ways to win games and put themselves in the Super Bowl, NFC Championship. Like, people forget that if Brock Purdy doesn't hit his elbow, we might not be talking about Jalen Hurts the way we're talking about Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni and company, right? And oh, by the way, the Eagles fired a Super Bowl winning coach like 5 minutes after he won the Super Bowl, and then they tried to do it again with Sirianni. So it's like the cities like that. I think that's what's really interesting about Miami for Tomlin. I don't know what the relationship versus the public way. Trading him to New York would just be so clean for the Rooneys, and it would be so wholesome for the league. Whereas if he goes to Miami, the memes, the TikToks, like everything that's going to come out of Miami Mike, oh, buddy, maybe they look at Gen Z and all this stuff that they were trying to do with Taylor Swift and actually see a way for the young men to get in on the conversation and kind of force this thing, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, to happen.
And when you said 4, 8, and 9 or whatever, it got me thinking. When Josina Anderson says a longtime NFL head coach, how long do you have to be coaching?
Yeah, because there's only 3 over 10 years, right? It's Andy, John, and Mike that are like 12, 17, 18. That's it. That's the list.
And you know, I mean, would the story in Cleveland be that Stefanski's looking for a change of scenery?
I will say, you know, you say this all the time. Sometimes you just can't please a city, a fan base, a coach, a boss, whatever. But like, I mean, Stefanski's coach of the year twice. You could say what you want about how things have been handled. A lot of that's on the Haslams. Think about that he didn't pay Deshaun Watson. The Haslams wanted to make a splash. Like, if I'm a 2-time coach of the year and I'm in this situation that I'm in and I don't see a way out. So yeah, to your point though, what is long tenured? What does the Sean McDermott thing is interesting too, because I think a lot of people really like him. And I think a lot of people think he's really smart and he's acquitted himself pretty well. He was awesome on Hard Knocks. Like, you look at him, not the same way you look at Tomlin. Like, you look at Tomlin and you go, that arrogant motherfucker is just talking over everyone. He is talking down at people in every room that he's in. The Tomlinisms are no longer things you put on boards and you want on the walls in the 16-year-old Friday Night Lights kid's room. It's not that anymore. It's like, man, he's going to that well one more time and they haven't won doing that shit. You watch Hard Knocks, when you rewatch in season AFC North, you see his own players looking like they're falling asleep in the room, looking like they're about to roll their eyes, being like, I can't believe he's bringing this shit again. And then you hear them now, Patrick Queen going to the podium saying it's scheme. You hear Cam Hayward talking about, we might not have the right play called, but if it's not the perfect play, but we execute it perfectly, we could still have a chance. Come on, man. Like, 99.9%, if this is true at all, it's about where is Mike Tomlin trying to dictate that he ends up.
Yeah, because none of these other guys would want to leave. You know, you could see almost all these other guys getting fired. But what you just said about Stefanski is very interesting, that he's like, dude, I'm a 2-time NFL coach. They want me around, but it's time to get the crap out of here because it's not going to get any better. And now we're Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel. That's just, you know, that's a dumpster fire. If I was Stefanski, I would definitely want out. Okay, I want to, next up here on the Knoll Road, salute the current players and the legends for speaking out. You know how rare this is?
Yeah.
They never do it. It's considered a no-no. Like, it gets you in trouble with the head of the coaches association. It gets you tagged as, wow, you don't want that guy in your locker room. It can cause you job security, not only where you're at, but your viability in other locker rooms. Brandon Eccles, we just got to be better. If it's from a player standpoint or a coach standpoint, we got to all be better together. The Patrick Queen stuff that's gone viral is just incredible, with him talking about how out of position they are as linebackers and how difficult of a spot they're asked to be in, defending players behind them who are on the outside.
He was point blank asked, are those things you can fix in game? And he just said, yeah. Like, they don't make the adjustment as what's the point of having the iPads, the tablets? Sorry.
Yeah. The in-game adjustments are crazy. Ben Roethlisberger said, we got to be up by 20 for me to be comfortable at half, because if you're up by 10 or so, the opposition's going to come back on you because we aren't making any adjustments. And this is something that's very important. I think no matter what city you are in, the level of pressure that legends can start to do. Now, every time somebody goes on the fan and goes off on a half-cocked rant that nobody on the flagship wants to do, the entire city can't say, well, that's just Filipponi. Right? That's just those fan guys wanting to do hot takes and say explosive shit to try to get a name for themselves. Once the legends start doing it, it draws so much credibility to those cries for help.
Well, and the thing that's so funny about even the flagship stuff, right, is they put themselves in a position where it's like you're trying to find something to hang your hat on. You're trying to find something to celebrate, and you go, oh, look at this thing that happened. Look at this player that's emerging. Peyton Wilson's going to break the single season tackles. Peyton Wilson's put a lot of bad tape out there. And now they're breaking those things down and saying, hold on, Darius Slay's not been great. And Pierre is playing out of his fucking mind. But you're telling me when Slay comes back, Pierre just goes to the bench? Like the questions that are being asked aren't, I'm trying to make a name for myself. How do I get this quote in lights? How do I go viral with this thing I'm about to say? They're strategic, schematic, like football 101 stuff. You can't run cover 3 against 4 verts. You can't not have an adjustment when a Luther Burden III comes in motion and changes the math of the formation. And these guys are all trying to, but they don't know what to do because they don't have a rule for it. Mike Tomlin wants to call the play and play the play that's called like it's, 2008, 10, 12. Like the thing everyone talks about, every quarterback, every person who isn't, the X wide receiver who's just waiting for that one word so he can go run out to his spot. Everyone tells you there's 2, if not 3 or more plays called in the huddle, check with me's, and then all the builds off of that based on what you see when you get to the line of scrimmage. And that's before you even talk about the RPO stuff. And I know I'm doing the context rabbit hole of here's all the machinations of all the things that can happen. My simple point is the Pittsburgh Steelers have won. This is the play that's called. And regardless of what the other team does, this is the hill, the sword we're going to stab ourselves with as we die and get dunked on.
It's horrible, and it's one of the clear cases that maybe Brian Flores would be an immediate massive upgrade as a coach on this staff, and he's one of the names.
People will say, though, look at what this Steelers team that we hate so much, didn't we beat them? Didn't we give them hell? Didn't we cause them all these problems and throw scheme and all that stuff? And it's like the any given Sunday part of this, for anybody who wants to clap about any particular win or any particular matchup or any particular piece of data, is 2016 is what it all comes back to.
It does. And you beat Carson Wentz, and it was great. And they have one of the worst quarterbacks going right now in J.J. McCarthy. Minnesota's really falling apart. Let me just say this about the flagship, because I have some insight here. I work for the flagship in Dallas, 105.3 The Fan. And what we do compared to the Steelers flagship is 180 degrees different. Like Jerry Jones just wants us to be like a sports radio station and do whatever it takes to make interesting content, right? That's how he empowers his flagship and says, to talk about whatever you guys want to, just make sure it's served up hot. The Rooneys love listening, and they love hearing people be complimentary of them or just focusing on the game. They don't want to hear the negativity, and they allocate a massive amount of money to very talented people who can then weaponize that football IQ to be positive and, in a way, gaslight the fan base into just focusing on the positive things. I mean, have they talked about the cover 3 verse 4 verts? How much Mike Tomlin conversation are you getting in there? Now, I love listening to the flagship, especially when they're winning. I mean, they're great at talking about the matchups and the news and the stats and the injury updates and the 8 layers deep on every individual on the roster and who's going to be active, who's going to be inactive. I could never do that myself. If Jerry Jones decided he wanted to run his media influence the way the Rooneys do, I'd have to go across the street and find the rogue radio station. So I really appreciate Jerry Jones. I really appreciate the talent level and the management of the Steelers flagship and how they go about their business. I think it's great, and it serves an amazing purpose. But a lot of how they have to craft their opinions is for job security.
Well, I think that's been true for a long time, and the gauntlet's been thrown down because every single show here in town is now asking the tough questions. And now, at the very least, challenging the status quo and saying, why is no one talking about this stat, 2016? Why is no one talking about all these other things, MOF and, depth of target, all these advanced metrics and, Is DK Metcalf really wide receiver one? Why is no one throwing to Roman Wilson? Regardless of his Aaron Rodgers or Mason Rudolph, he's always open. Like all these different things. Why did Broderick Jones waste a couple years on the other side after you traded up to draft him and Dan Moore wasn't any good? Like all these things that have kind of been there, surface level, you acknowledge, but then you keep it moving to keep it more positive. They're coming at him on Tomlin Tuesdays, and Twitter and all the other places they're just done.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to be positive, it's because you're a real fan. Excuse me. And you've been here for a long time. You care. You want to see them win. You believe in things like speak it into existence, and the energy that you put out into the world is the energy that you give back. And also you're going on your timeline and all you're seeing is bleep this and bleep that and fire everybody. And then you try to put it into perspective and you look at winning percentages. You talk about the Hall of Fame and a Super Bowl ring.
Let me just say, if you're trying to be positive now, it's because you're dumb. You don't understand how bad the football is.
I'm going to say simple because
okay.
I think you have to dumb it down. I don't think people are stupid, but I also think people don't want to watch for 4 hours on Sunday and expect the worst because they're not ready to root for their team to lose.
Sure.
For that to be the only thing that can be the thing that makes the thing change.
Yeah, I get it. Like as a very young fan, when I first started listening to sports radio, I was like, man, why are these guys being so critical? I just want to cheer for my team to win and believe.
Right.
And the older you get, you realize, man, there's 32 teams in this league. The chances of you being the best are low, and we need to put some pressure on the organization and put that out into the ether that this isn't good enough, because a dissatisfied fan base motivates ownership through their apathy. Right. If you're just like sheep going to the game and buying your jerseys and waving the signs and believing nothing will ever change. Right. The Cubs wouldn't have gone out and gotten a great GM to come and push them over the top. The owner would have never decided that we got to allocate the money and take a financial risk to bring in the players that can bring us a World Series. And, when you can finally get that level of pressure going, and then, I guess how we got originally on this point was all of these legends, and salute to Steelers takeaways here at Pittsburgh Sport on Twitter that, has chronicled all of these names have come out in critical ways against Mike Tomlin. All of that comes together to mandate change because ownership's like, we need to get out of this toxic cycle that we're in.
Yep, absolutely. And the thing that, man, it is so hard to look at Sunday and get up for it and then watch a loss in and of itself. And then you deconstruct that and you go, oh, okay, we turned the ball over. Oh, okay, this guy's hurt. Oh, okay, we're young. Oh, okay. But like, it's just the same damn thing for years, right? This isn't 1 week, 1 month, 1 season. This is years of stubbornness times willful ignorance and people want to point out things like there's like a 52, 54, 56% of Aaron Rodgers' total passing yards are over the middle, and 12 or 13 of his 19 touchdowns are in the middle of the field. And you go, Mike Tomlin isn't afraid of the middle of the field. You can't look at the game plan and the way Mason Rudolph played last week and think anything other than it's a mandate from Mike. You can't hear the players talk about not having the tools to adjust during a game and also not having the coverages in their base and not think that that's not coming from Mike. Like, you can't say Terrell Austin was a bad coordinator before they hired him. Arthur Smith was at least questionable. And I will say this, Artie has been really, 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 really creative in the run game, less creative in the pass game. Also, how much of that is a quarterback just throwing it to the guy who's open. So jury's still out for me on Artie. But Matt Canada and some of the other things, because anybody who pushed back on Tomlin before was basically shown the door. And now that the city is starting to impress their will upon him, he's looking for an exit.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Like, it's got to be the head coach's idea or negligent and not getting it fixed. You know, like Matt Eberflus got fired in Chicago because he wasn't heavy-handed enough as the offensive coordinator was failing to call a timeout. He's like, well, that's not my side of the ball. Both sides are your side of the ball, bro.
Right.
Here in Dallas, the Cowboys start. Matt Eberflus is their defensive coordinator. He's running zone 99% of the time. Schottenheimer goes into his office and says, hey, this week, we're playing Washington, and Jaden Daniels really struggles against man. If we do zone, he's probably going to torch us. The analytics say we must play at least 50% of the time in man. They played in man. There's 2 or 3 other things that Schottenheimer said, hey, I'm the head coach here, and it's just kind of my idea that I want you to do things this way, and the results have, been better. You need your head coach to be the smartest guy in the room, no matter what room he is in,
Period.
and have great ideas.
Period. I mean, short of hiring Matt Patricia to be your offensive coordinator, which is when Belichick took it too far, everything that they built that program on was about exactly what you just said. And that's why when you look at McVay, when you look at Shanahan, when you look at all those guys who were together at one time, and I think a lot of people fail to realize that those guys were assistants. They were basically glorified interns, gophers who became assistants, who became position coaches, who became coordinators, who became head coaches. Like Kyle Shanahan looks at a stat like Brock Purdy during the Monday Night Football game on passes over 15 air yards, 1 touchdown, 6 picks. He doesn't give a fuck because he wants to do so many horizontal stretch plays with Christian McCaffrey. Everything builds off that. Guess what? George Kittle's been hurt. Brock Purdy's been hurt. The whole receiving room's been hurt. And he's willing to take those risks because they service punts, because they threaten the defense, because they're going to figure out schematically, even if Bosa goes down and Warner goes down and the best guys go down and they throw 3 picks in a game, they're going to find a way to grind out a 22-9 win against a team that was in the playoffs when that game kicked off. Yeah. There are no excuses. There is just execution.
Yeah, and if you're going to be hands off, like maybe Shanahan is on the defensive side, have Robert Saleh. If you're going to be hands off, then you better have a guy that's got all the answers. Broderick Jones and Derek Harmon both out. It's probably Calvin Anderson and Y.J. Black stepping up. So we'll hope for the best there. DK Metcalf probably going to be questionable with his ankle.
Roman Wilson season is upon us. I just quote tweeted someone over the top of that.
I hope so. Rodgers said today that he's got confidence in Roman Wilson. We want to see that. Tomlin said he has great optimism Rodgers will return, but he was not ready today to take snaps under center. So a lot going on here as we approach week 13, Steelers Bills. We'll be back real soon to talk about the head coaching candidates we want to see and to put a big spotlight on this matchup with Buffalo. Till then, we'll see you next time here on the Knoll Road.